The presentation topic. Okay, so the presentation topic today is why kids like fantasy books. It was given to me last week, so I'm just doing it into general today. So let's talk about the aspects of fantasy books because there's a lot of interesting, very mysterious aspects of these stuff. So there are three major aspects, however, that I keep on finding while I searched up the topic, which is one, a unique setting, which you can see in the upper right there, which is like a very there's like a lot of interesting aspects to the setting. Like it's like a natural crystal like building in there that's just one out of many examples of the unique setting in it. And like this will appeal to the reader because of it will often be very beautiful or mystical, or like have a specific thing that is drastically apart from regular life. So like unique setting is one. And then second thing is complex and sophisticated characters. So like basically very like you can see in the bottom right all these superheroes from Spider-Man to Captain America, like all too many more. All of them have very distinct, complex and superior, sophisticated characters. Like Spider-Man, he's a man basically that has a spider-like ability. So like he can basically he can basically jump across. He can use like the string that spiders use and like iron. And like Thor is more like from mythology, which is like having a he has wielding the thunder and stuff. Like there's a lot of characteristics. Like they also have complex relationship within other characters. For example, Spider-Man's two mentors like Iron Man. So like he looks up to Iron Man a lot. So like that's one example of it. And the final aspect is magic. So like you can see in the bottom left, like a book with a spell that's a classic symbol of magic. So basically like there's gonna be lots of magic nearly everywhere. Like for example, in the Marvel universe, like you see with Spider-Man and stuff, like those string that he pulls out, that's just magic. Like it doesn't exist in real life. So that's like something like a lot of nearly all fantasy books will have some type of stuff that doesn't exist in real life, and like that's basically magic. And fantasy is a broad type of literature. Like many other qualities can come from it. Like there's so many different other qualities that can come from like a very interesting plot to complicated conflict or like some complex family tree or something. Like there's so much that could occur. Like you have to like completely read imagine the world and stuff. Like you have to create there'll be like complicated family trees, there'll be like a complicated map, there'll be lots of stuff. And then the benefits of fantasy books. So like I'm gonna get to the question why do kids start using more fantasy books, but the benefits, one of the major reasons it's being pushed is because many people know the benefits of fantasy books. So like makes me readers more open-minded and creative. So since the fantasy books were often very creative ideas, like unlike textbooks or like nonfiction books where like you can just base it off of something, like fantasy you have to completely make up on your own, which will make and like if you once you read it, like it's gonna make you feel imagine stuff that may be slightly different from like if another person read the same fantasy book, it may be a different interpretation. Like there's gonna be lots of interpretation, and like there's a lot more deeper thinking. It gets like there's no like set rule that back for like a fantasy book, unlike a nonfiction where like you can refer to the time period, like it will be based on facts in real life. So like that is something that will make you more creative and it improve language and word choice of the reader. So like there's more complicated words in general, like in fantasy books. books in general, like especially in the later ones, like it will improve your comprehension in general, and another reason why is because like fantasy books are very pop since fantasy books are really popular and more engaging to read, it will that was connected with improving language because the more you read, the more language improves. That's like a simple idea. And it improves increases critical thinking. Like I said, like there's so many interpretations of a fantasy book. Like you have to think whether to whether like the characters development and stuff because there's a lot of hidden stuff inside can can fantasy books, and then like it develops better emotions like empathy. So like in particular empathy is like the character inside the fantasy book, like let's say Harry Potter, like as Harry Potter goes through the journey, like you'll feel like some emotional connection with him and you want to hope that he'll succeed or something, which will like that, which is basically how like you'll get more emotions and stuff, and like it will help you develop better emotions basically. Yeah, and but empathy is especially one example that will come. And then some of the best-selling fantasies right now in modern times, the Harry Potter series, like every lots of people know this, like J.K. Rowling made this from a dream, and now it's the best-selling book. Over 500 million dollars came in profit, which was a very good. The Percy Jackson series, like made, I don't know about in India, but in the United States, it's definitely one of the biggest series. Like everyone talks about it. Notice there's like 5 books, right? By Rick Riordan. It talks about Greek mythology and stuff. It's based off Greek mythology, and it basically is good. And then The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings. These were very classic fantasies. They were written by J.R. Tolkien in like the 1930s and 40s, and yet they're still very high selling to this day. Like many people read them today. So like that's why it's in this list. And Roald Dahl books, which is like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and then like James and the Giant Peach. There's so the witches. There's so many books he written that were just random ideas, but like he made them into very good fantasy books. British authors, so like Roald Dahl. And the Dr. Seuss books, he's a children's author. Basically a lot of his books are fantasies. It's like it portrays animals talking and doing humans like stuff. There's also imaginary stuff that were in and like these are like children types of fantasies. They often have a message hidden in them, which made them incredibly popular. There's so much more fantasy books that are very popular, like The Hunger Games, which is like a 3-part series of which it was kind of like a futuristic universe, and where like a person had to compete with other people. Like I like that book. uh, I like that book a lot. And then like also there's so many others. There's I could talk about like there's otherwise that like I couldn't I have to move on in the presentation, that's all. And I like the pushes for kids to read fantasy books. So like fantasy books are getting increasingly popular, and mainly because many fantasy books are also getting popular, like fantasy movies, I mean, sorry, are also getting popular, like Marvel and Star Wars. So like Star Wars and Marvel, like those movies are all they basically are fantasies in general. Like there's lots of magic, lots of complicated setting, lots of very unique characters and like stuff. Like they all are getting popular, and like the like this like Star Wars started in 1977, like when movies were starting to get that capability in the 1970s and 80s. Move on, like there's so many movies that were like at fantasy based, like their parents are often gonna have the fantasy behind them, and like they're gonna more likely show their kids these stuff, which will improve their fantasy stuff. And like many fantasy books are also becoming movies and TV shows as well. So like there's lots of books. There's a person that writes a book and then it becomes like a movie. Like the recent example in India is Ponniyin Selvan, which was a book in 1950s, and like it came out recently as a movie. So like lots like that. There's lots of books that are coming out like that. But like the great Game of Thrones, like it's actually originally a book before becoming a successful TV show. And then like there's a and like it can also be video games that are also getting like more fantasy based. Like Legend of Zelda was one of them, and Mario, like all these video games, they're all fantasy based. Like they aren't real or and anything. And like basically, they create and like these fantasy world. We're living increasingly in a fantasy world, and which is leading to more fantasy books as well. And like many of the children's stories are classic children's stories are fantasy books. Like all these children's stories now, well, every single one, on apart from maybe one, maybe fantasy, are fantasy books basically. Like the Lorax, Curious George, all these what did happen technically in real life, but like it happens in the books. And like when you expose children at an early age to these fantasy books, they'll be more likely to read them or and enjoy them more when you do it. And like as mentioned previously, they're shown to grab people's attention more than when reading. So like if you expose a person to a fantasy book series like Harry Potter's, there's lots of good series for them to continue reading. And like there's also similar books that are since fantasy is so much, there's so many books, there's gonna be similar books as well because there's not gonna be a lot of there's difference though, like there's also lots of similarities. So like once you read a fantasy books, it will be hard to stop reading. And then afterwards, there's gonna be other fantasy books that are similar or like in a series like Harry Potter. So that's another reason. So like all these factors are contributing to kids liking fantasy books now more.
That's a very nice presentation. It's a good frame of thinking. Now, my question is, how do you think the fantasy books, or you have even made a reference about the fantasy movies, uh, are getting transformed from the state of being books? Do children or do the teenagers or preteens for that matter, are they really happy, or are they holding up a perception that this could be uh, very useful in the future? Is it why they are getting into the fantasy book, or they have some other kind of purpose aligned to it? You see, one research says that every teenager does something thinking that it will yield a future benefit. So when you apply this to that particular philosophy, to that particular school of thought, do you really think there is any future benefit by reading this fantasy book and the fantasy, watching the fantasy movies and all that?
Yeah, like teenagers will often read fantasy book mainly for enjoyment more than like actual like thing. So like they have to create like some type of excuse. So like even in school, increasing seeing like teachers wanting to include fantasy books. Like they would encourage like combination of like set reading, which the school gives you certain reading to do, and like you have to do your own reading, which is like creative reading. Like you have the free will to choose, and like many in the free will, they're choosing fantasy books. So like that's what lots of schools are giving now. So like teenagers are having less of that problem. And then they can use that as a justification because like fantasy books also have lots of like character development and stuff, which which the teachers want you to present on a freeze on a book. Like the fantasy book will be a really interesting presentation. Like that's just one example that kids can use. So like the justification for reading fantasy books on your own time is it's just mainly for enjoyment purposes. Like it's for more leisure things and like improve and like in the US examinations, like there's two types of exams you can take, the SAT or the ACT. You can either take either of them, typically in 11th grade. And research has shown that if you read like books books that you enjoy, no matter what the type is. Like it will improve your score in the reading section of that, which like many people are struggling, especially like Indian Indian people are struggling in the reading section of those. And like if you read those books, it will improve, including fantasy books. So like that.
Okay, so Dr. Bruce Lipton is one of the famous cell biologists. He has written a lot of books. He's a pretty aged old man right now, and he has lived life so very well by writing, authoring a lot of books and coming up with lots of schools of thoughts. He says a human being is programmed in the first 7 years since the birth of the child. The first 7 years, when it is programmed properly, a person can even become a rocket scientist if he or she wants to. And he also says the problem is the first 7 years, the child undergoes a lot of misleading, misguidance, the guidelines, the living philosophies, and the education system that are given. The basic perception formation of the child in the first 7 years are being so wrong. And that is why in the future the person becomes weird sometimes. And the person is not live on proper terms. Life has to be lived. Now let's talk about your first 7 years. Achyut has the first 7 years. Let's go back into the time. If you're 8 year old, or if you're 9 year old, or 10 year old, having a recognition to your own self that I'm a grown-up boy now, I'm at least in the preteen age, where your first 7 years properly programmed.
Could you repeat the last part again? Sorry, I couldn't hear.
Yeah, I'm asking where you understood that first 7 years part, right?
Yeah,
My
the
question
first
is, yeah, my question is where your first 7 years properly programmed. Go back to your life and think and give me the answer.
like could it have gone better? Maybe yeah, but like for in general, like I think it was okay. Like there's a lot of stuff I could have done. Like I could have joined sports when I was younger. Like if I joined when I was like 4 years old, because I joined it when I was eight, I probably would have had the I would have had to, I would have continued it all throughout high school, which would have definitely made me a better person, for example. So like sports maybe one, and then like academics, I real I tried my mom tried to put me into like a lot of these advanced things, but like I really didn't get into the advanced after 7 years. So like there is nothing that could really be much done. Maybe like a better program, definitely. Like we were new in America though. Like my parents were still learning stuff, like how like America was working, because it's so different from India. So like she doesn't know what the expectations there are. Like she raised me more like an Indian child. When I was young, I spent over half my time in India rather than America. So like getting used to the schooling and stuff, like definitely that probably was probably the biggest reason. Like eventually I got the whole how it worked, but like that was only when I was 10 or 11, when I started going to like sixth grade or something. That's when I started like really learning it. Because when I was younger, like I just was hanging in there that was probably one of the things that I maybe may improve, like adjusting to the new life here more common though. It was something a little beyond our control though, because like we were immigrants, so naturally we didn't know how this worked, and it took some time for us to develop it. So like that probably may be the big reason. And like reading again, like I really didn't read a lot until like started was 8 or 9. So like that's going back to fantasies. Like I watched a lot of TV shows, if that's a thing, but like I never read any like lot of children books. Like I other than like Dr. Seuss and a few others, like I didn't really read a lot too until like I was 8 and 9, and by then for me I was more interested in like other types of fiction, like not necessarily fantasy, but like historical fiction, realistic fiction, scientific fiction, like all those. So like that's probably one effect that probably occurred when it comes to tie with this. So like fantasy, though like fantasy, but the thing is I like fantasy movies and TV shows because I would watch them when I was a young age. Like I watched Curious George. There's all the on TV more than I read the book. And like I was watching all these TV shows when I was young. I just spent hours on the TV when I was 3 or 4. So like I knew all these, and he said like I was really liking the fantasy movies up to this day. Like I now watch Star Wars, Marvel, all those stuff. So that's probably an effect.
Did you like the direction that Marvel has taken now? Like after they've got a couple of movies and all those movies were box office bombs and disasters. What do you think of it?
I mean, I wouldn't say disasters, but like yeah, I really like I mean like now I know, like she definitely knows this place now. Like she's now lived here for over 10 years. She'll knows it, and like I like and like she's learning still. Like it's human. Everyone needs to learn, and like she's doing her best, which is like what I want, which is the good thing.
Right. So, what would be your next week's presentation? Do you have any premeditated plans about how, what kind of presentation you'd like to make? This time you made a presentation. There are two times when I have asked you to give a preview presentation of my own choice of the topic. And next week again, it comes along to your choice of the topic, and you'll have a couple of people joining as well. Probably I will be joining from Chennai, and Mitra will be joining from the place. So, what kind of topic you are going to choose next week?
Oh no, like a science or history. Like I really need to figure it out a little.
Take your time, and because the very reason why I'm giving, just breaking the pattern of your science is I want you to test how far multiplexed your thought pattern is going, because this fantasy thing is entirely different extreme from what you would normally do as a science thing. So that's why you did a pretty good job today. So, so otherwise, as I told last week, you have to let me know when you are looking for some interventions or mind exercises for making you even more stronger. So I give those mind exercises when the student asks for. So you still have time. You can think about it and make it.
Okay.
You've got any other questions today?
Not really, sir. Like I saw your YouTube channel and everything. There's a lot in it. So like if I need something, I'll just ask.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for taking time to watch my YouTube channel. Glad you did. Right. So if you got any questions, you can always ask me about it.
Okay.
They will keep coming because of late I am doing a lot of live stream for some of the people. So I will come up with a lot of titles. So keep a watch out.
Hmm.
Right, Arjun. So the timing next week, like what time is comfortable for you? 7:30 a.m. or 8 o'clock in the morning? Sunday.
S- 8 o'clock because mainly because because sleep is definitely something. Like I have to wake up at like 5:30 in the morning to go to school. So like in those weekends, like I'll appreciate more sleep. Like I typically wake up and like I just brush and stuff, and then I do my presentation, and then I come to class. Like I really don't do a lot else more. Like I just brush and do it, and then after brush and then take a quick shower, and then I come to class, and then afterward I eat breakfast. So like that's the thing I do typically. So like
Okay. So even if it is 8 or 8:15 or 8:30, you can take a couple of more minutes if you want, because you can even have your breakfast and come to the class. Because if that is okay, it will be making you feel a little energetic. You can do that way also. Think about it.
oh okay, sir.
Yeah. So for me, the indication is I'll keep checking mail. So once my mail reads that Achut has joined the Zoom room, immediately I'll come. So is there a way where I can clearly know when you are ready for attending the class? Maybe a quick
I
mail or
can
something.
just I
Yeah,
can just message you, sir.
fantastic. So
I
in
can
that
just
case, I'll
message you on Gmail or something. Like I have to open up Gmail to open the Zoom link, so I'll just message you there and then open the Zoom link.
if it is Gmail, if it is the case of the Gmail automatically alerts me when you get into the Zoom. So we will better keep it that way. But if you'd like to personally message me or something, I will leave my number here. So you can,
Oh,
because
okay.
what in other area, if dad wants to speak about anything, the fees or something, he has his own number. So I don't want to disturb him by talking to him to his number. I'll leave the number here. You can note down the number, and once you're ready, so you can just give me a ping so that I'll set up a Zoom or Gmeet, and we can.
Okay, sir. That will work. I'll just note down your number.
Yeah. So, yeah. So this is the number 91. That's Indian extension, and 989425245. That's the Indian one and only WhatsApp number that I have. You can note that
Yeah, I
down.
can use WhatsApp.
Sure, that should be fine. So
Oh,
next week, what you do is you wake up, you get fresh, you take bath, you have your breakfast, and then come to the class and leave a message in WhatsApp, and then we will set up the session.
okay. Okay, sir. I'll make sure I take breakfast.
Yeah, please do that.
Like at this point, like I can just speed through brushing and showering. I've been used to waking up so late, like for 2 minutes more. I can do them in around 10 minutes. So like I never so like breakfast, like either I take to school or just sometimes not eat it at all. Oh, because lunchtime in our school is 10 o'clock, which is like not like the best lunchtime. It could be more breakfast as well. So like
Breakfast, yeah, right. Yeah.
that's like something like that's weird. And then afterwards, I couldn't eat anything till like 3, which is like we also weird. So like it's like kind of like it's my breakfast lunch schedule is all screwed up because of this. So yeah.
The school basically starts by at what time in the morning? School.
Typical 7 o'clock. So like bus will come at 6:30 and then I be there at 7.
7, and the finishing time is 3 o'clock.
Yep. About Well, it's supposed to around 2:30, but like half the time I have to be there by at 3. So like basically, and I come home on the bus, which will take another 30 to 1 hour. So like that's kind of what it is.
Right, so you get enough sleep on Sunday, and you wake up meticulously, and then we can schedule the session. That's absolutely no problem. Because this is Sunday night from 7:30 or 8 o'clock
Oh,
in the night is also fine. So it's not going to be a problem.
yeah, but like 8 o'clock's good enough for me.
That
Like it's fine.
includes your breakfast also. 8 o'clock, you'll be able to grab the breakfast, and then you
Yeah, I think
go.
yeah.
So two things are important. I'm just making this time shift for two reasons. Reason number one, I want you to have good sleep, as you mentioned. Number two, have breakfast and then attend the session fresh. So make sure that you do these two things next time.
Okay. So like next week, 8 a.m.
8 a.m. should be fine. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Once you're ready, when you're in front of your laptop, just send a message over WhatsApp and we will start.
Okay, sir.
All right, that's it. So thank you so much. We'll meet next week.
Bye, sir.